Ever since the inauguration, the Trump administration hasn't been very interested in polling or surveys because they are fake news and rigged. But that's why it was such a surprise yesterday when they released their own survey, initially sent out to their most hardcore supporters on their email list. It is a mainstream media accountability survey. Let's bring up that first page you're seeing there. Initially, some fairly benign, not particularly unexpected questions. Do you trust MSNBC to report fairly? Same with CNN. They also asked it about Fox News, by the way. An overall question, do you believe that the mainstream media has reported unfairly on our movement? So far, nothing particularly surprising there, trying to gauge the opinions of their supporters. But if you go to the next one, you're going to see there what we who've studied the crafting of these sorts of polls and surveys in academia would call leading and unfairly framed questions. On which of these issues does the mainstream media do the worst job of representing Republicans? Pro-life values is one of the choices right there. They also have, do you believe that political correctness has created biased news coverage on both illegal immigration and radical Islamic terrorism? Some choice framing there as well. Do you believe that contrary to what the media says, raising taxes does not create jobs?
That's very poorly worded.
That's incredibly poor.
I don't even know what they're asking. There's no way a Trump voter knows what they're asking.
There's no way Trump knows what they're asking.
Do you, by the way, the previous page, you left out the most important words of all, which is they listed like a dozen things. Which do they misreport on? And then it said check all that apply. So, of course, everyone could just check all of them.
Check them all.
Yeah. It should be obvious they're not legitimately trying to gather information with this survey.
You don't think so?
I don't think
this
so.
is a scientific endeavor right here?
I kind of doubt it.
That is slander, Michael Tracey.
I think they're probably trying to entice people to put their information into whatever databases, vacuuming up all that information, so probably not a scientific survey.
Well, these people are already signed up for their email survey, and it actually doesn't ask for much demographic information, which actually goes to your point that this isn't a scientific thing since you wouldn't have their age or demographics in terms of income and race and everything. But this is initially going out to people that are already signed up.
Yeah, that's interesting. Look, they'll use it for goofy political purposes, but...
Oh, Trump is going to reference this for the next 35 years.
This is my second not guilty of the day for the Trump administration.
Really?
Not guilty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Trump enabler over here.
Yeah. And because no one thinks it's scientific, they don't think it's scientific, and if they claimed it was scientific, they'd be laughed out of the room, which is fairly par for the course. And they'll use it. I bet the Democrats, I don't know if they do something like this, but it wouldn't be surprising, and I wouldn't care if the Democrats or the Republicans did it. I mean, what a benign question. Do you trust CNN to report fairly on the Trump presidency? You're asking Trump supporters. They're going to vote no, of course, right? And then Trump's going to use that in a press conference. He's going to say, I heard somewhere that 89% of people don't trust CNN to report fairly. Okay, and when he does, then we'll call him a goofball because it'll come from this, right? But them doing it, benign, not guilty.
Okay, well then perhaps I can pique your interest with another theory that the main point of this is to test out narratives. As he does very often in his speeches, they can also do it in these surveys. Test out the way that you frame particular issues, see how people bite. Let's go through a couple potential examples. Do you believe that the media wrongly attributes gun violence to Second Amendment rights?
Again, that is so poorly worded.
Leading a witness.
Yeah, okay.
You like that one?
Yeah.
Let's see. Do you believe that the media purposefully tries to divide the Republicans against each other in order to help elect Democrats? Which, by the way, again, if you ever do try to make your own survey, there's way too many elements to that for a yes or no to actually say anything. But also, do you believe that the media creates false feuds within our party in order to make us seem divided? I don't care what the response to that is, but it does tell us a lot about how they intend to frame media coverage of their going forward, because they seem to know that very soon more Republicans will be standing up to Trump as his approval rating goes down even more, as the honeymoon period, to the extent that it exists, wears off. And so when that starts to happen, they apparently have their counter-narrative ready to go.
Excellent point, John. I am totally with you. I am absolutely with you on that, 100%.
Yeah, it's called a push poll. I get it.
Yeah.
So, and they're trying to plant that.
John's right. John's unearthed something important, which is they were already anticipating the divisions within the Republican Party. It's not just any push poll. They're building a narrative with this poll for what has not happened yet bigly, but is about to happen bigly, which is a major Republican pushback. They're smart.
Yeah.
I give it to them.
And this is a Republican Party endeavor here,
Yeah.
right? So it's in their interest to project this appearance of unity,
Yes.
even when it doesn't really exist. I mean, the Democratic Party would probably do the same thing. The DNC always wants to say how unified they are.
Probably true.
But Trump has always sort of reveled in prodding various people within the Republican Party. I mean, just a couple weeks ago, he tweeted about how John McCain wanted to start World War III or something, or I think McCain and Graham, whatever, the duo.
Yes, that's right.
So, I mean, there's always been factions of Republicans who are against Trump, and Trump sort of relishes in that because it kind of gives him this semblance of independence or autonomy.
Okay, I'm going to go on a rant here in a second. First, let me just clarify one more thing about push polls. If you don't know how push polls work in politics, it is to get you primed for an idea. So for the classic one is down in South Carolina in a primary of George Bush versus John McCain back in 2000, they did a push poll where they asked people, if you knew that John McCain had an illegitimate black daughter, would that affect your vote? Now, he doesn't, but that was a push poll to go, why? Does John McCain have an illegitimate black daughter? Because I'm a South Carolina Republican voter and deeply racist. Okay, I vote for Bush. So that's how push polling works, okay? Now, that's an extreme example, but you get the gist of it. So now, my rant. No one in the real world cares about unity. Only the Republican
Thank you.
Party,
Oh my God.
Republican Party, Democratic Party, and the media care about unity. So like, oh God, MSNBC loves talking about how the Republicans are divided, the Republicans are divided. So what? Right? There's not a voter who's like, the Republican Party is not quite as unified. I'm voting Democrat. No one has ever thought that. Ever.
I gotta disagree at least partially. I don't know that unity matters by itself, but as an element that goes into your view of the brand that is a particular party, people care about the strength of brands. We're a consumer culture, and your attachment to a party can be partially influenced by how strong you think it is. We always talk about strength. If it's divided, is that a component of strength? Probably not. It might not make them vote for Democrats, but it could cause them to pay a little bit less attention, perhaps not go to vote at all.
No, John, your point about brand is great, but it really has nothing to do with the unity, because I don't think lack of unity causes any brand deterioration. So a classic example is this election, where the Democratic Party was very unified behind Hillary Clinton. It's got to be Hillary, it's got to be Hillary, we're all unified, Hillary.
Oh, I'm
And
talking
then
about the people. I'm not talking about the members of the DNC. I'm talking about the population, which was not unified.
But the population was force-fed this unity crap from the Democrats, and it didn't work at all.
They didn't buy it, but that's what I'm
Well, they
saying.
did. Enough of them bought it for long enough that she got the nomination.
And then the Republicans, we heard from the media, like, they're so divided. You got Trump versus the establishment Republicans and Rubio. They're so divided, they're going to lose. Oops.
Right.
No, that's absolutely true, because think back to the primary process last year. Incessantly, the media focuses on, look, there's this insurrection within the Republican Party. They're at each other's throats. There could be some kind of hijinks at the convention to thwart Trump. None of that happened. The Republicans essentially lined up behind Trump. There were some dissenters here and there, but the real dissension was on the Democratic side. But the media really underemphasized that, because they do. I think there's a kernel of truth in that survey question. Yeah, the media does place probably a slightly undue emphasis on Republican Party divisions because it's sort of interesting and it creates a drama.
Now, I'm going to parachute in on this conversation from the fourth dimension, which is, I think you two guys are right. I mean, I don't think you're wrong necessarily. I think you two guys are right, but you're missing the key point about this survey. You're talking as if Trump is rational. Trump is not rational. So Trump doesn't want there to be talk about other Republicans not liking him, even if it doesn't matter in the big picture. I can see Trump getting, no, wait a minute, they all love me. They all love me, so I want a survey that shows that the people all understand that they love me, and that it's the media trying to make it look like every Republican doesn't love me, because he's not a rational guy.
Maybe this is less about elections and more about he just wants to feel loved.
Yeah, no, guys. So it's a perfectly great theory, except for the fact that we already know Trump does not read past the page. And this is a
You don't think he typed this up?
No, this is a multi-page poll coming out of the RNC. There's no way it made it all the way up to Trump, nor would he care. Let's put some watchers on the wall, investigative journalists to run down the Trump administration and the establishment. You can make that happen. TYTnetwork.com/go.